Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming, and part 2 of exploring transgressions and taboos in role-playing games. I wanted to get straight into this. I wanted to get into the moralism. The moral debate. There are going to be people on the left who say that people on the right are always telling them what they can and can't do. They're trying to limit you. They're trying to limit who you are. They're trying to lock you up. They're trying to kill you. They're trying to deny you medicine. They're denying who you can be. There are going to be people on the right who are saying the left's always trying to police our speech. They're always trying to tell us what we can and can't say, what we can and can't do. They're trying to limit my freedoms. Fuck them. That's a broadly political opinion. And in games, the leftist players are going to be saying, well, these far-right players want to play things like where there's racial benefits and where you are playing heroes' journeys of white, strong men saving damsels in distress. There's no nuance. It's all black and white. It's measured in value rather than values. And the right-wing players are going to say, in my day, we were able to say what we wanted at the table without risk of offending anyone. We could play what we wanted, and women should have a -2 strength. Now, all of this is generalization. But it is moralizing as well, because one group's morals are different from another group's morals. One may be right, one may be wrong, one may be right, one might be left. And some people float around in the middle, some people are all over the spectrum. It's a very wide world we live in, I'm sure you will agree. Exploring morals in RPGs, especially in the framework of the moral panic of the 80s and 90s, is very interesting because the moral panic of the 80s and 90s was, of course, primarily religion-fueled, and the religious aspect still exists today. It's wearing a different jacket, but it's still there. But moralism is almost the cornerstone of all taboo and transgression. After all, you are assigning morals to certain acts, certain people, certain creatures, certain behaviours. And the example I often go to, I'll do it with a twist. Usually I say for the Goblin Village raiding the caravan route that heads to your town. Today I will say we're playing Vampire the Dark Ages. Your coterie becomes aware that the lupines that live in the forest outside your domain have laid waste to the caravan that had your herd and your mentor in it. Those valuable background dots aren't going to pay for themselves. You need vengeance. And so your coterie ranges out to the woods, which may be a foolish endeavour, to confront the pack of werewolves. Now, some players would say, that's not a moral question. You kill the werewolves. We can't run the risk of them disrupting trade, and they've killed my nearest and dearest. There will be other players who, however, say, you know what, I want to find out why the werewolves did what they did. I want to tiptoe around their camp and find out what they're up to. There'll be others, the more social base, who say, I understand they have some kinfolk around in the domain. I'm going to question them. Does that mean you're going to abduct them first? Does it mean you're going to speak to them over a drink? Does it mean you're going to threaten them? Who knows? Point is, there's many different ways to skin a cat, or in this case, a lupine. And the moral question exists as soon as the crisis is put before you. You don't have to solve every single problem like it is a nail, and you are a hammer. Sometimes you can take captive. Sometimes you can find some kind of equilibrium or concession. You could speak to these lupines and you could say, look, I understand this is your territory. Well, this is our territory. Let's make a deal. Now, I get that in the vampire framework, that doesn't necessarily make. Werewolves hate vampires by instinct, and typically the other way around. So, what does that mean for your games? Well, it means that if your characters buck that trend, you are making a moral decision. The point at which you decide we're not just going to burn this camp to the ground and massacre everyone, no matter their age, no matter their involvement in the crime that has been committed, you are making a moral judgment. As soon as you start talking to the alpha of the pack, the Galliard or the Philodox or whoever, and you start trying to come to terms, you're making a moral decision. As soon as you decide those sacrifices were ones I was prepared to make because now the trade route is safer, that is a moral decision. You can explore these moral quandaries in your role-playing games, and they can make you start thinking about things in the real world. Let's say, for example, in fantasy, there is a big country and a small country. Hell, let's say the small country isn't even recognized by some people as a country. Now, this small country has some fanatics. Let's call them goblin fanatics, and they occasionally raid into the big country, and the big country loses lives. It suffers due to the machinations of certain extreme elements from the small country. So what does the big country do? It dwarfs the small country completely. It decimates it. It starves it. It locks all the routes into and out of the small country. It punishes all for the crimes of a few and is immune to reason. That doesn't say everyone in the big country has that view, but the big few on top do, and they control the levers of power that result in the small country suffering. What do you do in that example? Let's say you work in the big country. Do you go along with it because your people are occasionally threatened by a few people from the smaller country? Do you oppose it knowing that your freedom and safety become at risk? Do you just donate to charity? In a game situation, you are a town of humans, elves, and dwarves, and this is a country of goblins. The goblins are starving. They've been second class for a very, very long time, and occasionally, some of them, they lash out. They lose their minds, they lash out. Well, it's time to massacre the whole lot of them. In such a case, who is morally right? Well, it's relative, isn't it? It depends on your values, it depends on what you've lost, it depends on what you have to gain. This is a taboo to explore at the gaming table, because while that goblin and human, elf, and dwarf example I just gave could be placed in any role-playing game fantasy setting, I think most of you watching are going to be bright enough to know what analogy I'm making. If you put it out there as blatant as I did, some players are going to say, well, I don't like my games being political. I don't like these moral questions. This is taboo. This is transgressive. You are making me uncomfortable. And that is absolutely fine. It is absolutely fine for players to draw a line and say there's something they don't want to cover in the game. I think that is great. But moralism and moral relativism is such a thick seam through every single role-playing game, every single story you tell. As soon as your character takes action against or with another person, they are making a moral judgment. You need to speak with that player. And you'd say, well, what kind of campaign would you like to play? Talk me through a scenario. And your point isn't to punch holes in their argument. You're not trying to say, well, I think you'll find that is a moral decision. What you are trying to establish is, what are their levels of comfort? Is it that they just don't want any clear earth analogies? Okay, you could do that. Is it that they want their bad guys to just be black and not ethnically, morally black and beyond compromise? Okay, that's another decision you can make, though it does limit the possibilities of roleplay with them, because after all, you can't really negotiate with someone who just wants to murder you all the time. There's lots of ways you can address this particular problem, or it's not even a problem. Exploring morals in RPGs, whether you're looking at it from a humanity level in Vampire the Masquerade, whether you're looking at your loved ones in a game like Curseborn, whether you're looking at the safety of your settlement in the world below, or just alignment in D&D, is brilliant fodder for role players. As I was talking about in the sex video earlier in the week, it isn't a question of what do your players want to do, how grotesque they want to get with it. It is more a question of what do the players learn from the experience of it. Not from an educational standpoint, but from an understanding and empathy standpoint. As soon as you start going into questions of moral relativism and what's okay for me is evil for thee, and vice versa, you really start to get deep into the weeds of what your characters are up for, what they're against, what they will fight to the death for, what they will oppose. Who will they serve? Who will they undermine? All of these questions can be born from the subject of morals. And so we go back out and we think of gaming through the lens of, let's say, the 80s and 90s or the 80s satanic panic. And you would think to yourself, well, there's a reason TSR removed all the sex and devils and demons from their RPGs, isn't there? Because the people who were closely watching them, that wanted to shut them down, found those things morally objectionable. Did they harm the games by turning demons into Hanari and devils into Bartezu? Well, that is very much your call to make. But you can easily see how the moral judgments of those outside of the game and in our culture and our politics will have an effect on what's going on inside the game. And that is, for me, a really interesting thing to explore at the gaming table, because there may be people in your group who agree with the censor, with the individuals who object to the games you're playing and the subject matter within those games, who look at Vampire the Masquerade as a tool of Satan and all his little devils. So morals and moral explorations are core to practically every game you play. Much like with the sex video, at the end of a session, you should really ask players, especially when they've had to make a great moral judgment, what do you think your character thinks of everything that's just happened? Will your character's understanding change now? Will your character approach the same situation differently if it comes up again? These kinds of questions, especially concerning morals, are integral to a character's growth. In the vampire framework, that is what could make a vampire shift from path of humanity to a road, or a path of enlightenment, for example. Because I can't cope with what I'm doing anymore. I know it's inhuman, but if I adopt this alien philosophy, I can process it. It can make sense to me now. In D&D, your alignment shifts. That's a lot simpler. In Curseborn, there is no such thing. Instead, you have to deal with the repercussions, the consequences of your actions. That doesn't mean moral exploration needs to be punitive. Making the wrong decision shouldn't result in your characters always being punished. It should result in them growing in a different way. Characters do not grow straight up. They go all over the place, or they should do, and that's going to have a secondary effect on the player themselves. Again, I don't think games are a replacement for a good education or good therapy, but what they can do is expose players to scenarios they hadn't even considered before. And so, while I never suggest tricking players into playing through real-world scenarios just to make them think they're stupid and go, ha! Now you have to admit that God is dead. Ha ha ha! Because if he was real, something would happen at this point. Instead, what you are trying to do is just open eyes, open minds, and tell a story that they haven't played through 1,000 times before. Moral stories are good for that, because there are lots of different moral quandaries you can throw out in a game that, yes, some people are going to find them taboo, but it's the taboo stories that are most memorable because they're having to explore things they are less acquainted with. Anyway, that's all I want to talk about for now on moral quandaries in terms of taboo and transgression. Let's see what we come up with next time. I'm thinking racism. That'll be great fun. Anyway, thank you very much for watching all. I will be seeing you next time.